Welcome to Gin Clear Aviation. My name is Dan. I am back at Popham today as I've been invited by Callum Hall to chat about his 1968 Rollason Condor, a D.62B model Golf Alpha Whiskey Echo India. Let's go and meet Callum and discover the unique traits of this unusual aircraft. I'd like to introduce you to Callum Hall, who has this amazing Condor aircraft. Callum, really nice to meet you. Nice to see you this morning. Can you tell us a few bits about this aircraft, about how you came to own it, how long you've owned it, and how easy it is to maintain?
Yeah, sure, that's not a problem. So I bought this aeroplane back in May 2021, and really it was by pure chance. I just got my pilot's licence and needed something to fly, and my grandfather used to own an Oster with the old owner Peter. And he had just given up flying, but wanted the aeroplane to go to a good home. And obviously, being an aircraft engineer myself, he knew that his project that he'd spent many years rebuilding was going to be looked after properly.
And did you have to do any work to it, or was it all done when you bought it?
It was all done when I bought it. There was a few things on the pre-purchase that we picked up that were done. But sadly, 4 months into ownership, on a nice flight to Stapleford, I was watching the fabric come off both leading edges of the wings. So it was then grounded for 18 months, and James and Mark Masters refabricated the wing and repainted it. And then about 2 weeks after the test flight for the next permit, the valve stuck on one of the cylinders, so it was down again for another 3 or 4 months. So it's been a little bit of trouble, but it's been relatively straightforward in terms of ownership, as no aeroplane is quite simple, but now it seems to be going really well.
So when you bought it then, you obviously had to do some work to it, so you refabricated the wings, and you had some engine stripped down. Was that a valve problem, did you say?
Yeah, the valve guide tolerances were slightly too tight, so Delta did all the work, and then we just refitted, carried out some more test flights, and now she's running like a sewing machine.
Fantastic. So can we just have a walk around the plane, maybe just do an A-check, and then you can explain what the plane's made of, the quirks of the plane, the sort of things that are very specific to this aircraft, and then we'll maybe take it for a flight if that's cool.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
The Drouin D.60 Condor was a light aircraft designed by Roger Drouin in France in the 1950s. The first Condor was registered in France as Foxtrot Whiskey Bravo India X-Ray and first flew in 1956. The D60, which was Drouin's prototype, had a 65 horsepower CNA-D4 Italian-made power plant. Then came the D61, a Drouin production variant with a 65 horsepower Continental A65 engine. By this time in the United Kingdom, Norman Jones, the founder of the Tiger Club and owner of Rollason Aircraft and Engines, hit upon the idea of developing the Condor for the demands of flying clubs. With a number of refinements to the design, Rollason Aircraft and Engines produced the Rollason Condor at Croydon Airport from 1961. The D62 Drouin or Rollason variant had a 75 horsepower Continental A75 engine. One was built by Rollason, later upgraded to 90 horsepower with the Continental C90. After this, we saw the production of the D62A Rollason variant with a 100 horsepower Continental 0200A engine, but only two were built. And from 1964, the D62B Rollason variant became available with a 4-inch shorter fuselage and flaps. 41 were completed, some subsequently converted to the D62C standard, which was a Rollason variant with a 130 horsepower Continental 0240A engine for glider towing. Only 4 of this variant were built. In 1973, Rollasons ceased all aircraft work at Croydon and moved to Shoreham, where only a single Condor was completed. Let's talk about a few of the D.62B characteristics. Length, 22 feet 6 inches. Wingspan, 27 feet 6 inches. Empty weight, 417 kilograms. Maximum takeoff weight, 670 kilograms. Fuel capacity, 73 litres or 19 US gallons. It has a two-bladed fixed pitch propeller. Maximum speed 110 knots. Economy cruise speed 93 knots. Stall speed 40 knots. Range with full fuel 300 nautical miles. Takeoff distance to 50 feet is 581 feet, and the landing distance from 50 feet is 449 feet.
If you can explain an A-check and what you look for when you're going around this plane.
Yeah, of course, no problem. So I first start at the front, and I normally take a good look at the wooden propeller. No chips, any delamination, or any loose bolts or a loose propeller. So I always check the leading edge first, front and back. On both blades. Then take a check into the cowling to make sure nothing's got in and nested overnight. Make sure that all of the spark plug leads are on and tight, and nothing visible in the cowling is loose. Just come round and check this side. Mechanical fuel pump here at the front. No leaks. Then on to fitment of the cowlings, make sure they're tight and secure. And then on to check the oil.
And what are you looking for here? What sort of...
So this takes 6 litres, and we're at 6 there. I will now have to wipe the oil on the cowling. And then another check through here just to make sure that everything seems okay. Exhaust seems okay, gaskets, no leaks inside. Battery seems secure. Then check the exhausts underneath, make sure they're nice and secure, not loose. That one's okay. And this one has a slightly more, but that's just the expansion joints. Then down here, check the venturi. So this drives the artificial horizon and the DI. Make sure the pipe work is good and that it's not loose or there's nothing blocking access to the venturi. I then make my way round to the left hand side of the aeroplane. Stall warner here, top plates for the undercarriage legs. Make sure the tyres look okay, tread depth and the toe-in angle, as these have a natural toe-in. Make sure there's no leaks on the brakes. And these use differential hydraulic drum brakes. Underneath, make sure the fabric is okay and that all the panels are secure. pitot cover off. Make sure that's okay, roughly in the direction of airflow. Then landing and taxi lights, one in both wing. This particular Condor has the rounded wingtips, where most of them have slab ends of just planks of wood screwed into the actual wing rib. So this is one of the very few, I believe, with the rounded fiberglass wingtips. LED lights with strobes. Then round to the aileron. Full and free movement up and down and in the correct sense with the opposite side. Make sure it's secure. Cable attachments, top and bottom. Split pinned, and the bottom one split pinned as well. Checking the Nicra press sleeves, make sure that the cable's not pulling through. Then onto the flaps. Making sure that the rod end attachment is okay, nice and free and in safety. A little bit of free play. That's nice and secure. Then we move on to the fuselage. Back door is shut. Static ports, nice and clear. Then on to the tailplane panel, nice and secure. All the hardware is still in. And now on to the tailplane. Making sure that all 4 attachment bolts are nice and tight, that there's no free play fore and aft or up and down. Fabric condition at the joints here, where they're taped to the rib. Make sure that's not worn through. And then on to the elevator on this side. So we have a gap seal here on both sides. And we're checking for full and free, no binding, no unusual sounds. Make sure that the hardware is okay, split pinned. Make sure the trim tab is nice and secure. And the main attachment in here, nice and free. Now onto the rudder, nice and simple. No free play in any bearings. All the hardware's in. Rudder cable attachments. Turnbuckles are wire locked. Cable's not pulling out of the sleeve. Compression spring and the tail wheel arms, all good. Make sure that there's nothing loose. Full range, left and right again. Back onto the elevator again, same thing as the other side, nice and free. All the hardware is secure. And the attachment hardware here and the mounting attachments look okay. So we have 4 attachment points for the tailplane, one on each side at the front and one on each side of the rear. And that bolts the tailplane onto the fuselage. back down the fuselage again. Static ports clear. Onto the windows, making sure there's no cracks. Nice and secure. Just make sure that being a one-piece wing, that all the bolts feel secure, there's no play in the attachment joints. Make sure all the panels and the fabric is okay this side. Tyre pressures and back to the brakes. Make sure there's no leaks. And that's it really, Dan.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, should we go for a flight?
Yeah, we've got to go and get some fuel first. And then once we've got about 15-20 litres of fuel, we'll be good to go.
Let's do it. Thanks, Carl. Great, so we've now got fuel. Can you talk us through your sort of startup procedure?
Yeah, of course. So first step really is make sure the brake is on, just down here, and then locked over the top. Next thing, we're already have been running, so we don't need to prime it. So mixture full rich, set the throttle onto left, and then quick look around.
So we've got good oil pressure, just over 40 psi. Voltage, the HT up, and the EGT will come up a little bit later on.
And do you want to just talk us through the dials and what you've got here?
Yeah, so here we have the speed indicator, which is in knots. So we tend to climb at about 60 knots to 65, and then we cruise at about 2400 RPM to approximately 85 knots in the cruise. Here we have the turn and slip. The actual aeroplane doesn't move, but the ball is what we use to get a nice coordinated turn. Up here we have the artificial horizon won't move until we've got enough airflow through the venturi to create the pressure, and same for the DI. Altimeter, vertical speed, throttle, and the RPM. Fuel, CHT, ET, amps, voltage, oil pressure, and the oil temperature is on this side.
Right. Okay, so we've got one transponder and one radio as well, is that right?
Yeah, so GTX 328 and a 255 Garmin radio with intercom.
And just going down here, you've got, this is the brake at the front here, but you've got toe brakes as well.
Yeah, so this big differential brake, this main brake, brake is a little latch over the top, and then depending on how far you move the rudder is how hard the brake on that side comes on.
And you've got the flap lever down in the middle.
Yeah, flap lever just here. We have two stages, so we have one stage and full flap. Then we have the trim wheel just here. Over this side, we have all of the switches, so you switch on from left to right. Mag switch, carb heat, cabin heat, the starter pull handle, and the mixer.
Great stuff. So where are you going to go today?
So we'll just head up to the north, around Greenham Common. We'll do some upper air work, a bit of general handling, and you can have a feel for the aeroplane. Then we'll come back and do a few circuits and get a feel for what the approach feels and looks like. Pop-up radio, hello again, this is Golf Alpha Whiskey Echo India. At the pumps, radio check and for information please for a local flight.
Golf Alpha Whiskey Echo India, your readability 5. Runway News 08 with the left-hand circuit and the QNH 1008.
08 with a left-hand circuit and a QNH of 1008. Golf Echo India. So, first thing to check, full and free controls. Correct set. Go up to 1800 RPM, check the Cockpit and check the mags and P's all at the same time. So stick back. Up to 1800. Cockpit drop about 75 RPM. Not running many, it's not rough. And onto the mags, left mag. 50 to 75, back to both. And about 50 to 75 on the right. T's and P's are good. Back down to idle. Pressures are good.
Golf Alpha Victor runway taking.
By the Cockpit.
Golf Alpha Victor, roger.
You've got about 700 RPM there, which is right. And that's it really. So we tend to take off with no flat setting, otherwise it gets a bit draggy. So we take off clean and with a nice gentle turnout. We're on 08. Golf Echo India at the 08 hold, checks complete and ready for departure.
Golf Echo India, roger, no reported traffic on file.
Golf Echo India lining up runway 08. We'll get it pointed nice and straight down the centre line. Get the tail up. Let it fly off at about 60. Golf Echo India taking off runway 08. Airspeed is live. There's the tail.
Does she come unstuck?
Golf Papa, dead side 08 left hand. It depends definitely on the weight and the temperature, humidity, but normally at around about 55 to 60. Initially the climb is pretty poor, but as you can see now we're about 400 to 500 feet a minute at about 60 knots. So we'll just have a little nod down, make sure nothing's coming. Then back up into the climb. But even now we're still climbing about 500 feet a minute. T's and P's are all good. So it's quite a good solid little area. It's quite it's almost forgiving, but not in a stall. It does have quite an aggressive stall characteristic, where it tends to drop a wing.
And the stall speed on this?
It's about 37 knots.
Alright, so
quite low, yeah. That's with full flap. But it's still very aggressive. If it's 2 up, it won't tell you which way it will stall, it will just drop a wing. But now we're approaching 50 foot to 1800. Keep checking the RPM. Trim. The trim is very, very sensitive.
Radio Golf
So we'll come back to 2400.
Flight check and taxi.
And top of climb. Fuel pump goes off. I'll just bring the mixture back a little bit.
Uniform Juliet, is that? Pop up Yankee Juliet.
And trim for 1800.
Golf. Okay, so we got 2400 RPM set, which is nice. We're trying to maintain the 100 feet on the altimeter, and you lean out a little bit, presumably just to reduce the richness and save a bit of fuel.
Yeah, they always run rich anyway, even on the ground, so it's mainly just to keep the fuel to air ratio slightly on the better side. So it tends to burn about 22 litres an hour.
Okay.
So it gives you approximately 3 hours of range.
With reserve?
With reserve of about half an hour.
But let's face it, this plane was designed as a trainer.
Yeah.
So it wasn't designed as a tourer or a people mover. It was literally two people bashing around the circuit, learning how to fly, and being docile. And it certainly does that job.
Yeah, that was the whole idea behind this aeroplane. Predecessor before this one was a two-seat tandem aeroplane, and wasn't particularly great for training because of the distance between the instructor and the student. So Roger Druin created the D.62 as a side-by-side trainer. But otherwise, generally, very light on the controls, very light and very light on the aileron. So it doesn't take much of an input to do what you ask it to do. And like now, to keep the ball in the middle, I'm only resting my foot on the right-hand pedal. So it's very stable in the turn as well.
Yeah, no, she's lovely, isn't she?
It's a lovely day for it, though.
It's absolutely gorgeous today, isn't it? Early spring day.
Good visibility, not too rough up here. So we'll join again from Overton this time, and we'll do a nice overhead join, go crosswind and on to downwind for our first landing.
Lovely.
But you don't get anywhere particularly in a hurry. I mean, ground speed of 71, we're showing an indicated of 82 to 83 knots.
But as you said, it's a training aircraft, so it wasn't designed to go long distance.
No. It was specifically for students, as easy to fly as possible, and as forgiving as possible. But with a nasty stall. Popham Radio, this is Golf Alpha Whiskey Echo India.
Golf Alpha Whiskey Echo India, Popham. Runway in use is 08 with a left-hand circuit, and the QFE 988.
08 with the left-hand circuit, and the QFE of 988 hectopascals. 988 hectopascals, Golf Echo India. But it is quite a heavy airframe. That's why it rides turbulence so well, because it's quite heavy. Right, it's very well built. The only weak point to these aeroplanes is the point where the undercarriage meets the spar. If you tend to have a heavy, you actually can crack the spar. Right. And obviously being wooden, that's not ideal. So now we're over. So on with the carb heat. And about 2,000 RPM. Golf Echo India descending dead side to 08. Extra rich. So I tend to try and get settled as early as possible.
Yeah.
So just let the speed bleed off a little bit. Now we'll take our first stage of flap. Just retrim. So we want to be aiming for about 65 at the moment. About 55 over the 55-60. So now we'll take full flap.
Echo India, Roger. Surface wind is southeasterly.
Trim.
At less than 5 knots.
Now we'll come back to about 60. Carb heat off.
Very nice. Nice landing.
Got to be careful with the crosswind and the brakes, you see.
Yeah.
Just let it naturally roll and tend to use the brakes, if at all, really.
That was fantastic. Lovely flight.
And then a bit of a clean up, flaps up, fuel pump off.
And that's it.
What a fantastic day I have had. I really love vintage aircraft, and it was a privilege and pleasure to meet Callum, who looks after this beautiful piece of history. Please follow and like if you can, as this helps me build my channel. Until next time, wishing you clear skies ahead, this was Dan from Gin Clear Aviation.